Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here's a quote I picked just for this episode. If there is a fear of falling, the only safety consists in deliberately jumping. Carl Jung, my dear friend, Phil Treadwell is back. The one, the only advisor, consultant, mindset coach, good friend of the Culture Matters podcast. Actually, episode 47, if you haven't listened to it, we go way back. Started the Mortgage Marketing Expert podcast about 5 years and 4 months or so ago. So he's a real podcaster, very excited about that. We're going to unpack, the last 2+ decades of being a top level mortgage advisor and now a consulting firm, essentially, and M1 Academy. I mean, there's more than I want to say, but thanks for coming back.
Well, man, I appreciate it. I'm excited to be back. I went through and listened to some of our last conversation. We covered a lot of ground. And so loved having you on my podcast. We're definitely going to do that again very soon. So, man, I'm excited to be back and have a cool conversation.
What has been, first of all, 2023.
2023.
Yeah, here we are. General entrepreneurship. What mindset, for example, high performance thought processes are necessary in your mind right now to succeed? Let's start with that.
Yeah, this really kind of plays into a lot of what I coach people on and consult on and do talks for. And I'm actually finishing a book right now that's titled What the Uncommon Have in Common. And uncommon people, high performers, people that really understand what it takes to be successful, really all understand a set of success principles. Now, we all apply them differently to our lives, and some of them aren't necessarily tangible. They're just kind of things you just get it and you just kind of understand. But right now in 2023, if an entrepreneur wants to be successful or an aspiring entrepreneur wants to be successful, they need to understand that it's going to take a lot of work. You have to take action. There's been other markets and other seasons where things came easy to people, whether that was funding or clients or whatever. But right now, people are having challenges in a lot of different ways. And if you're wanting to attract customers and clients or sell products or whatever it is you're doing, you need to understand first and foremost that people pay for solutions to their problems. And that's really it. If you're not doing enough business, if you don't have enough clients, whatever the metric is, if you're not doing enough, it's really for one of only 3 reasons. You're either just flat out not solving enough people's problems. That's pretty simple. The second one is you're not clear about the problem that you solve. And that's either you're not clear about the problem you solve or you're not articulating that to your audience well enough. Or the third reason is people don't believe that you can solve their problem. So that's really it. That's really what people have to understand. There's a degree of understanding that you have to embrace failure. You're going to have a lot of skinned up knees. You're going to hit a lot of roadblocks, a lot of potholes. And I think that entrepreneurship in today's day and age has kind of gotten a glamorous look. You know, there's the cars and the money and the travel and all these things. But whenever you're in the heat of it, when you're actually building a business, it's a lot of none of that. You're spending time on that craft. You're spending time on that business, working a lot of hours, a lot of thankless hours. And a lot of times it's a very, very lonely road. Yeah, I heard Ed Milet do a video and a talk on this of, you know, if you look up and your friends and family don't understand you and you're working late nights, it's an empty parking lot and there's nobody around you, man, you're on the right road. That's the road that you need to be taking. It's not a popular road. It's not one that many people want to take. And so that'd be my advice to people is, man, it's going to take a lot of work. You got to understand the problem that you solve. And it's not as glamorous as what people want to make it out to be.
I've been laughing this whole time because I guess a bunch of reasons. I guess first, are we on the right track? Because we're doing this on a Friday night. It's Friday somewhere. No, it's Friday, right? It is Friday, right? The days I get a little okay, and it's late. I know yeah. So are we all right, Phil? Are we on the right place?
Heck yeah, man. I think this is right where we need to be.
Can we just unpack that work thing for a second? You're the first person that's come on here in a long time that's actually talked about work. I don't mean that in a condescending way to anybody out there, but like, why do you think it isn't talked about? Maybe it's just my perception, but like the whole work thing, that why do you think, is it just unsexy? And then
Yeah.
can you unpack what that looks like?
Man, it's not popular, especially if you're talking about people that are selling systems or people that, have a product or service that's trying to simplify people's lives. At the end of the day, everything is going to take work. It's about action. Like M1 Academy, the M1 is a mindset first. I think that mindset's the most important thing. It controls our attitude and our actions. And those are really the only two things we have control over. We can't control the market. We can't control our partners or clients or anything else, but we can control is how we respond to things and the things that we do. So I think that work comes down to, just like you said, it's not sexy to talk about. We want to, portray that things are easier. We're in an environment of social media where we show a highlight reel. We talk about the good things. We don't talk about the challenges. We do, and I think we should more. I think we need to have more of a conversation around these things take work and a lot of work. And sometimes it's not a fun thing that we have to do. Sometimes it's, doing a lot of jobs that we don't want to do, that aren't in our zone of genius, for the purposes of getting to a specific place. And a lot of people want something for nothing. I'm kind of dancing around it, but the root of it is, man, a lot of people are entitled. Entitlement is rampant right now.
I'm not the only one that's seeing that.
Man, it's a whole society of a lot of people who are entitled. And I think part of it is a generational thing. We had parents that said, you can do anything you want. And people heard, I can do everything I want. And there's a big distinction between the two. And so that's really what it boils down to. You've got to understand you can do anything, but you can't do everything. You've got to pick something. You have to focus on it. I think I talked about it in the first time I was on here. My dad was a builder and he worked hard and a lot. He didn't catch all my baseball games. I learned a lot of work ethic from him. My mom was a teacher, so I'm kind of this entrepreneurship meets academia. But when you put those things together, what I really understood is you do have to have systems of things. When you build a business and you start hiring employees and scaling, it's got to be learnable. It's got to be teachable. It's got to be duplicatable, but there's no way around it. You've got to roll your sleeves up. You've got to put in the hours. You don't necessarily have to do it forever, but if you think you're going to just blow up and make a ton of money or sell a ton of products, and at certain seasons, maybe it is easier than others, but for the most part, you just got to lean into it and take action.
What behaviors right now? Because you spend a lot of time with high performing people. I just saw you at Neil's event. Shout out to what he's got going on over there. What type of behaviors are the high performing people that are, they're reaping the fruit of this time? Are they doing like what's that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Neil's a good friend of mine. We met around the same time you and I met, 2018 and 19. And Neil's had his head down working for years. People are like, oh, Neil came out of nowhere and Neil's exploding. They don't understand that Neil subscribed to this same package. He's one of those uncommon people that just stuck his head down and did a lot of work, a lot of thankless work, failed a lot. Embracing failure is a big part of this. And maybe we may unpack that a little bit. But even in conversations of people that are having a lot of results and high performing people, he and I had a conversation right at kind of the registration time, right before the event started. And we were just talking about people that are having results within the mortgage industry, specifically in the real estate industry. And they're still working hard. Sometimes people are working harder than ever for less volume and less income than they used to, but they're also working smarter. They're understanding, especially if you have a service like mortgage or real estate or something in that lane, there's a lot of things that you do. There's a lot of features of your business. There's a lot of services that you provide. And the people that are having a lot of luck and a lot of results right now understand that if you'll take all of those services and turn them into a product that's tangible, that people can kind of wrap their arms around, that is in turn value. So if you go to a referral partner, if you go to a client, you now have this package, this product of things that you offer that kind of uncommoditize yourself, if that's a word. And so if you have someone that's close to you on price, you now have this additional value add. Or if you're a little bit more expensive than someone else, you have something to bridge that gap. They're offering more value than they ever before have. And I think that that goes for all kinds of businesses. You can't just do the same old thing and expect results, because people have caught up. You've got to innovate. You've got to understand, how do I frame this, again, in terms of solving people's problems? You also have to understand really what business we're all in. I don't care if you're McDonald's. I don't care if you're Apple, if you're a mortgage professional. We're in the business of making people happy. We're in the business of love and happiness. You think about McDonald's. McDonald's, their best-selling meal is a Happy Meal. Their number one best-selling product is Coca-Cola, a Coconut Smile, right? They're in the love and happiness business. The product that they sell is convenient. It's, it's happy. They make money with real estate, but that's not the business that they're in. Right? Same way with Apple. Apple's in the business of creating tribes. The reason that the iPod popped off over hundreds of MP3 players that were way better, and you didn't have to go to iTunes to get the music. The reason the iPod exploded was because of white headphones. There was a status symbol. It was helping people feel included. Tony Robbins says our two biggest fears are being enough, being good enough, being smart enough, having enough money. And that plays into our biggest fear, which is being loved, not just romantic love, but being appreciated, being accepted, being included, being liked. So when you think about, if you're in the business of making people happy, we talk about mortgage, like no one wants a mortgage. No one wants a big fat mortgage. Give me the biggest one you've got, right? They want what the mortgage does for them. If you're in real estate, they're not in the market to just buy a piece of real estate or to buy a house. They're either trying to build wealth and passive income because of something that they want to do, or they want a house for their family to create memories, or to kick a rock and say, that's my rock. So people in business, top performers, understand these things, and they're shifting their businesses in ways that are capturing attention, because you can't just go put a video on social media and expect the phone to ring. You can't just go buy a bunch of ads and think people are going to click through and sell products. You've got to understand the problem that you solve. You've got to make sure that you're making people feel loved and happy and all of these things. And you've got to spend a lot of time doing it. The basic marketing formula: who's my audience? What's my target market? Then you've got to understand, number two, what problem do I solve? What value am I going to add? And then the third step is, where's the most effective place to deliver that value and that message and that solution to that group of people? And you've got to do that over and over and over and over. And you've got to keep refining it. You got to keep dialing it in. And again, there's no escaping it. It takes a lot of work.
What are the word tracks of those that are failing right now?
So a lot of people, again, my industry is predominantly mortgage and real estate. They say stuff like, well, rates are high, or there's not enough inventory, or, we're just trying to make it until the market gets better or goes back to quote normal. It's all excuses. I had a mentor one time that said, when you're making excuses, any excuse will do. Doesn't matter what the excuse is, any excuse will do. And so most people that are making those types of excuses don't want to do the work. They remember an easier time. And it's interesting when you talk about people that claim to be high performers and they start quoting the stats of their best year. Oh, I did $100 million in volume, so I'm a $100 million producer. Well, no, you're probably a $40 million producer that had a $100 million year, right? Let's go ahead and get our words straight. So when you talk about word tracks, it really kind of leads into embracing failure, right? This is something I spend a lot of time on with people. Failure was taught to us in academia that success is on one side, failure is on the other, and we have to decide which way we want to go. I couldn't fail every test, fail every quiz. And even if I learned everything I got wrong, in academia, I'm still a quote unquote failure. But in the real world, it's not one way or the other. It's actually stacked. You have to go through failure to get to success. You do get to learn what you did wrong and use that to take you somewhere. Those people that are making excuses aren't taking action, but there's never a situation where doing nothing is better than doing something, even if you fail. Because if you do nothing, you get nothing. But if you do something, you're either going to get some results, awesome, you get a win, or maybe you take a loss, maybe you fail, but that's when you have an opportunity to learn something that's going to help you get where you want to go. Every successful person, every uncommon person, every top performer realizes that's truly the path to success. Now, we'll have some people that'll say, I'm not afraid of failure. I'm okay embracing failure. And I would challenge that there are some people like that. But where I would challenge you is say, but are you okay with people seeing you fail? So often we're okay embracing failure, but we want to hide behind closed doors and not let anybody know about it. We're still concerned with what people think. And you have to think of other elite performers, other professionals. Baseball is the analogy that I use almost all the time. If you're a professional baseball player, and whether it's, minor leagues all the way up through, Hall of Fame, and you have a 200 batting average, you're playing AA, AAA baseball. If you have a 300 batting average, you're for sure in the major leagues. You may even be close to being an all-star. And if you have a 400 batting average, you're Ted Williams. You're one of the greatest of all time, right? Well, for people that are listening that maybe don't speak baseball lingo, a 300 batting average means 30% of the time you get a hit and get on base. Well, it's not difficult math to understand that 70% of the time they're failing. But what happens is they go in the dugout and they're like, okay, what pitch got me? What part of the defense did I not exploit? They're actually looking on iPads and in TV screens trying to figure this out. And they don't get to fail in private. It's very, very public. They've got to go back out there in 15 or 20 minutes and do it again in front of 40,000 people that are calling them, every name other than the one their mom gave them. So if we look at what other elite professionals do, they fail 70% of the time to still be one of the greatest that play the game. And we need to wrap our minds around, we don't have to succeed 80 and 90% of the time. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to, do all this stuff behind closed doors. We can go out there and take the proverbial swing of the bat and miss, and it be okay, because we're going to learn something. We're going to persevere. And realistically, that's what gives people hope. This Facebook and Instagram effect that we have, where we take 100 pictures, show the best one and say, that's our life all the time. We know that that's not true of our own lives, but yet we still don't distinguish that that's not the ones of other people. It's the same way with business results. You see, again, we go back to Neil. Holy cow, Neil came out of nowhere. He's got one of the best events in his masterminds, making millions of dollars. Neil's been grinding for years, and he's documented a lot of his successes and failures. And it's what creates a lot of belief for people. If we'll put that stuff out there, ironically, by showcasing our failures, giving people hope, helping teach people what we've learned along the way, you're going to succeed just by showcasing your failures. It's not a difficult concept, but again, we have to look inward and realize that's part of the process. That's a principle that we've got to wrap our mind around.
Where do you think that guardedness comes from?
A lot of it can just be our childhood. It can be past experiences, but more often than not, when people don't have the belief, that comes from lack of action. I tell people all the time, one of the first steps that you need to take in any of your businesses or any endeavor is figure out your why. Your why comes from your past. It's something that happened to you or didn't happen to you that's turned you into the person that you are today. So when people say, I want to help people, hey, it's a noble endeavor. Love that. That's what life's about. What is it that's significant to you about helping people? Well, I had this mentor or this teacher, or, I didn't get help. I had to learn these things on my own. Again, it's something that happened to you or didn't happen to you. When you unpack that and understand your why, you're going to realize, okay, this is the core epicenter of what my business is about. The next thing you have to decide is, what's the North Star? What is it personally or professionally that I'm trying to get to, that I'm trying to achieve? And then you've got to break that all the way down into those annual goals, some KPIs, but really you've got to reverse engineer it all the way back down to daily habits and non-negotiables. What are the things that I'm committed to do on a daily basis that are going to move the needle? And there's a couple of things that are significant about this. First of all, if you think about how reactionary we are a lot of times in life and in business, It's because we're scattered. We're not sure what to do. Well, if we've created this daily habits and routine and these non-negotiables that are going to move the needle, we get to wake up every day and understand that, hey, I have my calendar of appointments, I have my habits and my non-negotiables, and I'm in control of my day. I'm now proactive because these things are going to add up to where I want to go, because I know that's going to hit my North Star. And people, I think, are funny about this. But if you think about, if someone said, hey, at the end of 3 years, you're going to have $10 million, or the man or woman of your dreams, or this, whatever this pillar of success is and goal that you have. But to achieve that and have that in 3 years, you need to do these few things every single day for that amount of time. And at the end, you'll for sure have it. Will you do it? Everyone's like, of course I would. Well, that's what we're giving up by not doing those things. And we don't do them because we don't have the belief. But ironically, the only way we create belief is by doing those things. And this is kind of how I'll bring it home.
The paradox.
Exactly. So if you think about in the morning when you wake up, if you take some quiet time, or you go to the gym, or you listen to a podcast, or all of these things, you drink a smoothie or a protein shake instead of eating a donut, you get all these little wins. You start stacking habits. If anybody's read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, he talks a lot about this. You start stacking habits. What's significant, because our mind only distinguishes between wins and losses, but not how big they are. So if you've been stacking these wins and you have your first call or first appointment or something happens throughout the day, our mind's like, well, we had this loss, but I made my bed. So those cancel each other out. And now all of a sudden I still have all these wins. I have momentum. And here's where it gets cool. That momentum creates motivation. If you think about, if I heated something up in the microwave and it boiled over, right? You take paper towels or rag and you clean off that little round plate that spins in your microwave. And then you're like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and wipe the inside of the microwave down. And then it's, well, I'm going to do the counter around the microwave. And then I'm wiping down the kitchen. All of a sudden you're cleaning the whole kitchen. You're like, I'm going to start touching up the paint on the walls, right? All because of this first thing. That momentum creates motivation. And the other thing it does is it creates confidence. And if people don't hear anything else I say, I want them to catch this. Confidence is not a personality trait. Confidence is a skill that you learn. And you learn it by stacking these habits and overcoming these roadblocks and these speed bumps. Those people with swagger that you see that just light up a room, those aren't people that are naturally that way. They've overcome failure. They've stayed consistent and persistent, and they've continued to create that momentum for themselves. So it's ironic that we can just take those little things that we want to do every day, or already do every day in a lot of instances, be intentional about it, and we get motivated, we create confidence, and all of a sudden that belief is there that there is that thing at the end, that light at the end of the tunnel, that North Star that we're trying to achieve. But again, it all comes back to the attitude and action. If you have a positive attitude, you'll create some action. And when you don't have a positive attitude, action will help you. I'll have coaching clients that are calling and say, I'm in a bad mood, I'm frustrated, I'm this. I'm like, hey, go for a walk, go bust out a workout, go take some deep breaths, call me in 20 minutes, call me in a half hour. Well, physiologically, we're adding oxygen to our blood. That oxygenated blood's going to our brain. It's releasing endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, those feel-good hormones. So we can physiologically change our mindset. So this whole conversation about taking action is get your body right, get your mind right, and take action. And then, success is about consistent and persistent effort over time. That consistency, we all know what consistency is. You got to continue to do it. Persistency is where people get stuck. Being persistent means I'm going to stay consistent whether I get results or not. Too often we go for a little while and we get results and we stop, or we don't get results and we stop. But you have to stay persistent, and you have to do that over time.
This paradox of you need the belief to get the confidence, that action is what's going to come before the belief. So, chicken or the egg. Do you think part of the value in having that, like someone like yourself, the M1, like coach, is the external medium, the coach is going to give that extra belief to get the action. I'm just envisioning like this, there's me and I'm stuck in that pattern of not, right, that contradiction. But then I talk to you and you're like, no, you got this. I'm curious what you think of that. Like, is that part of the value of like why we exist in the first place? Meaning healers, helpers, right?
Yeah,
because there is
100%.
this paradox. Like, I
There
don't know.
is.
What do you think about that?
I think it's two things. I think the first is sometimes people will buy into the concept is I know I need to take action. That's going to help me create belief, but I'm not sure what actions to take. So a lot of times a coach can come in and dial in, here's those specific things that you're going to look different, feel different, talk different, and get enough incremental results that you believe that the process will work for you. Because a lot of times it's not that the belief isn't there that if someone else does those things, they'll achieve it. A lot of times we're like, but will that work for me? So a lot of times a coach just helps figure out what the specific actions are that they need to do. And the other part of it is just what you said, giving them some affirmation and helping them realize that what they're doing is the right thing, even if they're not seeing results. Just having a third party come in, it's always funny. We all give the best dating advice. What's that?
Like gravity almost, just the gravity of I might let this person down even.
100%. So a couple of things there. The first I was gonna say is we're all good at giving dating advice, but we're bad when we're in that situation. Same way with business. Like we're really good at showing other people what they need to do, but sometimes we can't figure it out for yourself. What you're talking about, those standards are very, very important because we may not always achieve our goal, but we'll always meet the standards that we set for ourselves. And so if we're not getting where we want to go, we need to raise our standards. Well, one of the easiest ways to do that is to change our environment, specifically the people that we're around. Jim Rohn is a genius, and we all know his famous quote, we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. I don't know that there's scientific evidence that the number's 5, but there is scientific evidence that we start to emulate, become like, and do things because of the people that we're around. So if you think about what my definition of a true friend isn't someone that just accepts you for who you are. I believe that a real friend makes sure that you live up to the standards that you set for yourself. We let ourselves off the hook very easily, but man, a powerful force is wanting to live up to that standard that someone else is going to help keep us accountable to. Coaching can be a big part of that, or a group environment. But sometimes we just need to look at the people around us and say, is this giving me energy? Or is this sucking energy out of my life? Are these people talking about the good old days and what used to be? Are they talking about where they're going and what they're doing and the things that we're going to accomplish together? And you got to audit yourself. I say that the 11th commandment is thou shalt not fooleth thyselfeth. We need to be self-aware. We need to understand about ourselves and the people around us. Now, it doesn't mean we have to cut out people from our lives, but maybe we just control the level at which they're around us in those times where we need a different influence. And again, if you don't have enough people to be around that are going to kind of help you raise that standard or stay accountable or just figure out what those new standards are, you've got to go put yourself in a position to find those people, even people of a really high influence. So, a lot of celebrities, a lot of high performers, you've run in a lot of circles as well. As well as I do that a lot of these people, adding value to their lives is just being around them and talking about positive things and not constantly wanting something from them all the time. Right? They run into the same challenges we do of finding people of a like mind that just want to talk about those things and kind of really be themselves. Too often we think these celebrities just inherently have this huge circle of people that think like them. Some of them do because they've curated that, but other ones, they're open to friendships or letting you hang around because, again, you're not constantly wanting something from them. You're not constantly talking negative. So a lot of times you can get in other circles of really high performers, of uncommon people, just by being the type of person that they would want to be around. You can also figure out ways to add value to their life and their business. But whatever it is, whether it's a coaching group, whether it's going and finding people, whether it's consuming their content, we've got to understand that we've got to put good in. We've got to raise those standards because we're always going to hit the standards we set for ourselves. So we've got to raise those higher and make sure we're in an environment to be able to hit them.
What about you has kept you in the podcast community? The reason I ask is like, it seems like, people quit these things.
Yeah.
Like you're at over 5 years. It's a very small percentage of people that are in the game. Why have you continued? Like, I want to go down that route.
Yeah, that's a great question.
I've got a lot of questions around that.
Yeah. So the easiest reason was from the very beginning, it's been an incredible way for me to do what we just talked about, which is be around people that I admired, that I wanted to emulate, that I felt like I could learn from. A podcast for anybody is an incredible way to meet people. And again, you have an initial contact with them and inviting them to be on the show. You have 30, 45 minutes, however long, talking to them, recording that episode. Then you have the follow-up where the episode's released. And then chances are you may see them at an event or something somewhere and you get to meet them in person. That's how relationships are built. Those frequent contacts over a period of time. I mean, you and I are the same way. We kind of knew of each other and then we met at an event and we continued to talk and then had cool conversations and podcasts. And that's how you build relationships with people. For me, these were titans of industry that I just wanted to know and learn from. And ironically, over 5 years, so many of these people have become some of my best friends, close friends, mentors, all these different things. And I continued to do it because it was just an incredible way, not only for me to expand that circle, but it was also my outlet to add value to people. I could reach a ton of people with a podcast, same as you. It changes people's lives and you don't even know it. Sometimes people will listen for a year or two before they've ever reached out and said, hey, you talked about this or had this guest that really helped. Yeah. Sometimes it's the Chelsea Pite says there's magic in the mundane. Sometimes the things that we think people don't care about are really the biggest opportunities we have to make connections. I remember an instance I talked about that my older brother years ago kind of got me into Scotch. I really like trying different types of Scotches. I had this guy reach out, send me a DM on Instagram and said, hey, I heard on your podcast that you like Scotch. I'm a bourbon guy. What's your go-to? Now, I found out later he'd been listening for over a year. He didn't reach out and say, oh my gosh, this episode changed my business, or, oh my gosh, I got this cool tactic or mindset tip. He reached out because of something that was relevant to him. And I think cool. That's the cool thing about a podcast is not only does it create relationships, it gives people an opportunity to relate with you and again, not feel that they're out there by themselves. Maybe they're on that lonely road. Maybe they're out there crushing it, building their business. And it's just a way for me to add value to them and let them know that there's other people that are doing the same thing.
You said, I felt like I could learn from them. If you think curiosity is a key, like a core value in the podcast community, or I don't know how you want to phrase it, but like, for the long stretch, right? There's people listening to this that may want to start one of these mediums. They've listened to the Culture Matters podcast, or they're coming from mortgage marketing expert, checking you out here. What are your thoughts around that?
I think that curiosity is around growth and learning. That's probably one of my passions in life. We live on a huge rock. And I want to see and experience as much of it as possible. And I love learning things from people. There's not one podcast episode that I've ever done that I've not learned something from them. Wow. It could be how they carried themselves. It could be, how they maybe were nervous in the beginning, but pulled it together and became confident. It could be the things that they specifically talked about. There hasn't been an episode that I've done, and we're up to about 200 recordings. We've released about 175 episodes, and I've been on probably another 100 or 150 other podcasts, and there's not one that I didn't learn something. So at the end of the day, curiosity is important because that's really our desire to want to learn something new. There's a book called The Slight Edge, And what the slight edge is talking about, it's similar to Darren Hardy's
Yes,
compound
something.
effect. But the slight edge, the whole premise is there is no flat, there is no maintaining or consistent. You're either growing or you're regressing. That's just kind of a law of nature. And so many people think they're just treading water and maintaining, but the world is growing and evolving. So if you're staying the same, you're actually regressing. And so I think people need to have to have a desire to want to grow, to want to learn, to want to get better. And a podcast is a cool way to do it. If you are a host, you get to ask a lot of cool questions of people. That's why I want you back on the podcast on yours.
Thanks.
I'm doing a lot of the talking. Well, I want to bring you on mine so that I can also learn from you even more whenever I ask you questions. And in the beginning, that was the whole thing. I didn't think people were listening or were going to listen to the podcast. I wanted to use some of the things that the experts said to feed an Instagram page. I was doing this mortgage marketing tip of the day on this Instagram page. And the cool part for me, I was like, even if people don't listen, I have some of the highest paid coaches and consultants and experts in the industry, and they're letting me ask any question I want for 30 or 45 minutes. Like, how is that a downside, even if no one listens to the podcast? And that would be my recommendation for people is you may want to walk up to Mark Cuban and say, hey, can I buy a cup of coffee? And chances are he'll say no. But if you have a podcast and say, hey, I'd love to bring on my podcast. Here's the audience. Here's what I'd like to talk about. You got a much better shot of him giving you 30 minutes of your time than if you just wanted to pick his brain and want something. And that's a tool that I've used and to have, some huge celebrities and titans of industry on.
Have you noticed that there was a moment or a level moment, was it like quality of guests or tenure or volume, like where the perception started to change of the show?
Yeah.
I'm curious around that. Selfishly, I've got some curiosities around that. Oh,
I mean, yes and no. I think in the beginning, when I reached out to the first batch of 6 that I invited, I essentially name dropped the other people that I was inviting before they'd ever really said yes. So I would reach out to someone and say, hey, I'm starting this podcast. Here's the name of it. Here's what it's about. And here's the other people that I'm inviting to be my initial guests. So it almost kind of gave some credibility. Well, fortunately,
that's pretty brilliant.
it was, man, I was going to take any angle that I could. So those first 3 or 4 episodes were really big names in the mortgage industry. And once I kind of had those few, it was easier to go and get other people within the mortgage industry because we created this audience. Maybe they want to showcase their product or talk about their company or whatever else. Then later on, what I realized, it was actually a coach of mine. I was trying to get another individual that had this really big event every year. And I'd reached out a few times and hadn't gotten a response. And he said, you need to think about this time of year, what his focus is. Like, what value can you add there? So the next time I reached out, I said, hey, I think we can help put butts in the seats. I'd love you to have come talk about your event, add some value to the audience. And he was very quick to come on. And so that's when I learned, when I'm inviting guests, if I can figure out a way to add value to them, meaning exposure to my audience, or is there a specific thing that I can do for them or make an introduction? That was a way that I got some other, big personalities, even that were ones outside the industry. That's how we got Gary Vee on whenever he was doing his Agent 2021 event. I cold emailed him in just the email that he, puts out there on social media, Gary@VaynerMedia.com. But I put bold in the subject, more butts in seats at Agent 2021, and then made my pitch. Hey, we got a big mortgage audience. That's people you're trying to sell tickets to. And there's a longer story there. I didn't end up having on for another year because when we scheduled the Zoom, it didn't work out. But it worked out in the end because I got to go to New York and interview him in person at his offices. And again, there's a story around that. But then all of a sudden, when you start adding value to some of these people and you kind of have a list of, people like a Ryan Serhant and a Gary Vee and a Brad Lee and, Evan Carmichael and Steve Sims and all these people, all of a sudden there's a different level of credibility when you reach out to a guest because they don't think you're either some fly-by-night podcast that doesn't have an audience or that you're going to try to trap them. We all seen those videos of a celebrity will go on a podcast, someone asks an off-the-wall question recording and then, makes that person look bad. I think whenever people get to that level in business or as a celebrity or whatever, there is kind of a little leeriness where you're more comfortable if you know some other people that are more recognizable names have come on.
I want to go to the book. What's going to be the structure of it? Is it anecdotes from those that you've, interviewed over the years or observed? And then I'm curious, I want to buy first of all, I want to buy it and, when,
Yeah, for
what's the
sure.
premise? That's uncommon traits. I wrote it down.
Yeah, it's the title of the book is going to be
Uncommon
What the Uncommon Have in Common. And it's
I like
essentially, success principles of top performers. And yes, it'll be some things that, people that I've gotten to know and talked to, interviewed on the podcast, coaches and mentors I've had, and even just people that are good examples out in the world. And right now we're finalizing the structure, but I think the way it's going to land is we're going to have in it a few different sections. What are some principles and habits around business? What are some around relationships? Some around just personal growth and personal development, and really just kind of unpack these. And we don't have the finalized number yet because some things kind of overlap and we're trying to put some intentionality to it. But really, it's just kind of lifting the veil of people that have true success in life. Again, understand a set of success principles. And a lot of people just aren't sure what those are. And we've talked about a few of them. You've got to change the narrative around failure. You have to understand when you're selling a product, it's not about the features of the product. It's about the benefit that it provides the customer. And, what are some things that they do personally? What type of habits do they have? I've recently started getting up really early. I get up about 4:15 or 4:30 every morning. The reason I do that is because I hate waking up early. But what happens is as soon as I get out of bed, boom, that's a win and a big one. Then I go to the gym. That's a win. I listen to podcasts. I post content. I go to a protein shake. And all of a sudden I've stacked all these wins. The crazy part is every single morning when I wake up, I literally am planning to go back to bed. I'm not going to do this. I'm talking myself out of it, but it's become a habit where I stay vertical. I go to the gym and I'm like, I'm not going to lift today. I'm just going to get on the treadmill. But then I get on the treadmill and I lift. These habits are things that highly successful people do that I've learned from, whether it's you wake up really early or whether you don't wake up early. It's not about that. It's what is your routine? What are the disciplines? What are the things that you consistently do over and over that move that needle? The Slight Edge also kind of talks about it. Again, it's a book I read years ago and I end up talking about it frequently. I need to reread it.
It's a great book.
Yeah. If you think about, it's feasible in people's minds that they can change 1% every day. Hey, I can improve 1% every day. Well, that's why 90-day programs work, because 30 days in, you actually start seeing noticeable results. 60, 75 days in, you start seeing a lot of results. And again, that momentum creates more motivation and confidence of, hey, this whole thing works. Like it's not rocket surgery here, right? Like we just need to understand that these are the things that successful people subscribe to. And I guess the way to really bring it home is I heard a quote recently that said, champions aren't extraordinary. They just do the ordinary extra, and they do things every day that other people just do occasionally. And man, I think that really, really, sums up a lot of what we're talking about here.
Champions aren't extraordinary. They do the ordinary extra.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I thought it was incredible. And he said, literally, champions do things daily that other people just do occasionally. And I'm like, that's really what it's about. It's, kind of even tying back to the beginning with this entrepreneurship conversation. Are you willing to give up the things that you like doing? Right. There's another, again, I'm a quote guy like you. Heard another quote. It was a video that said, we give up what we want most for what we want now. So often we give up what we want most for what we want now. So the question is, people, do you have a North Star? Do you have a burning desire bad enough? 92% of people that set goals at the beginning of the year or New Year's resolutions, 92% of people do not achieve those throughout the year. Only 8% do.
Really?
And the two main reasons, the first one is clarity. They say, oh, I want to lose weight. I want to get healthy. No, you've got to have freakish, detailed clarity. Okay, if you want to get healthy, what does that mean? Is that a athletic feat, or is that a certain amount of weight loss? Is that body fat percentage? Is that, blood work? And like, you got to get detailed, clear about what you want to accomplish. And the second thing is you've got to want it bad enough. The metaphor that was used in this, I don't know, it was an article or a video, said you've got to want it as bad as a drowning man wants his next breath. That's an all-consuming thought in his mind at that point in time, or her mind. So the question is, when you want something, do you want it bad enough? Do you have a burning desire for that thing? If you do, then it's very easy to stay consistent. That's what uncommon people understand is, I'm not going to be able to, go do some stuff on the nights and weekends. I may not be able to travel as much. I may not be able to buy these things. The goal form, the goal sheet planner that I have for my team and what I used from a mentor years and years ago, the first question is, what do you want? The second question is, when do you want it? And the third question is the kicker. What are you willing to give up short term to get it? And that's what most people, again, it goes back to the entitlement. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to grind out and build this huge business, but man, they don't want to give anything up. They want to still live a certain type of a lifestyle. Are you willing to sell all your stuff, sell all your cars, live in a different place because you want to sew all the money into a business? Are you willing to work from when you wake up to when you go to bed 6-7 days a week?
I just got really scared because, though scared, excited. I'm a little upset we did this so late because I'm not gonna be able to fall asleep. I'm so excited about this conversation. Phil, what do you think about the idea because you're saying, what do you want? When do you want it? And what are you willing to give up? Right. Okay. Yes. And then you mentioned the entitlement. Well, let's say that there's a percentage of people. Let's just say it's 90% of people that, they're going to answer, okay, I know what I want. I know when I want it, and I'm willing to give it up, right? So they're disciplined, they do it, right? But what if there's 10% of the population that can and won't, and we can't keep them happy, like we can't keep them as, because those are the employees.
Right.
Well, maybe I'm too putting it in a box, but like, it just worries me. Then it was just gonna be like a world full of entitled narcissists that want it but aren't doing the work. I don't know. That just thought came to my mind.
Yeah, I mean, but that's a fairly accurate description of a lot of the world right now. Is they want these things. That's
where the fear came from.
Right. Yeah.
Because if I think that I deserve it because I have the belief, but I'm not doing the work because I'm not willing to give certain things up. Now I'm unemployable, or then it makes things, the culture, right? Companies really have to like raise the bar for how they navigate with their people, because I don't know, I'm just a bunch of thoughts just flooded in when you said it that way.
There's a great thing there when you're talking about companies and culture, especially as business owners, entrepreneurs. You got to understand your employees are not going to work as hard for your business as you are, and you can't expect them to. You've got to understand that as a boss, as a leader, as an employee, you're there to serve your employees. They're there for their own reasons. And if you don't understand their reasons and help them achieve what they want, they're not going to want to work for you at all. It's the Zig Ziglar. If you help enough other people get what they want, then at the end, you get what you want. So from a culture perspective, I think we have a lot of business owners, especially in startups, that we expect people to sacrifice at the level that we will. So let's say they check the boxes, like you said, they believe they can do it. They're willing to give the stuff up. They're willing to work hard. And then they catch fire and they catch this dream. And then they start hiring people on the team who also catch the vision. They're bought into the cause, but it's not their business. It's not their company. So you can't expect them to,
I think it'll
subscribe at the same level.
I think it's proportional to the owner.
Yeah.
I think if the ownership is not working as hard as they think they are, then they're going to get stuck in that paradox, thinking that it's all the people.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot to
Oh, what are you
this.
talking?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, when you're talking earlier, a good friend of mine had about a 3-hour conversation. We always think we're going to talk for 20 to 30 minutes and it unpacks. And we were trying to figure out what is it, what are those either skill sets or characteristics of the people that make it happen versus the ones that don't. And is it the environment that they were brought up in, or is it as simple as mindset, or is it a skill set, or is it a mixture of the two? Is it the people that they're around? And one of the examples, we both had heard it on Patrick Bet-David's podcast. They were talking about the Vanderbilts. They were the richest family on the face of the planet, and that fortune was gone in a few generations. Well, each generation was around the generation before who theoretically had these characteristics. When we talk about our environment, like they were successful people, they did think differently, but yet each generation did less than the one before, and before you know it was gone. So is it really about your environment? Is it really about the skill set? And it's a combination of things. That's why there's not one thing that you could point to and say, hey, this guy is going to outwork everybody, therefore they're going to be successful. You just outworking everyone doesn't ensure success, because if you take someone who has a pessimistic mindset, a fixed mindset, not a good headspace, that does a ton of work, knows the perfect scripts, is doing everything perfectly, they're still not going to get the results of someone who has a growth mindset, a positive mindset, but has imperfect tactics. Because the proof is we've all been in situations where someone is selling us a product or a service, and we're like, yeah, it makes total sense. I absolutely understand it, but I don't know. Let me think about it. And then we have the opposite where you're like, I don't have a clue what you just said, but I'm in. Let's go.
That's the story of my life.
Right. Same way with me. I'm ready, fire, aim. I feed off of people. Like I'm going to go for it. Now I may have a little bit of a strategy in the back of my mind of how this is going to play out, but I'm pretty sure I said this because when I was listening to some of the playback, I truly believe, God's no respecter of persons. Therefore, we're all able to do, if someone else has done it, we can too. The question is, are we willing to go through the steps? Are we willing to put ourselves in the right situations, to be around the right people, to sacrifice the same way, to figure out what our natural talents are and build skill around them? That's another important part. So often we want to get better at the things that we're not good at, as opposed to doubling down on the things we're naturally good at and build skill around them. And more often than not, the things that we're naturally good at, those talents, those are the ones that we're actually passionate about, that we do like doing. That doesn't mean in the beginning you're not going to have to do some things that you're not good at or that you don't like, but we're talking about conceptually over time. Did you put all these pieces together the same way other people did? Then there's always, well, there's the luck factor and this person knew that person. Listen, I'll go back to what my mentor said. Any excuse will do. You've got to go out and find that for yourself. There's not one key characteristic. I think it's a number of things, but at the end of the day, the only things we can control are our attitude and our actions. And our attitude is a big part of what we put in our mind, what we put in our eye gate, our ear gate, the words that we say, the people that we're around. That is going to be an edge that a lot of people miss.
You said something earlier I want your thoughts on about failing, being willing to fail in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
I just want your thoughts on this, like thought picture. The leader, the owner of a concern, right? The owner, there's a level of failure when the owner lets people rip their ideas apart. Like, those that are employed within the organization.
Sure.
Like there's a level of vulnerability. And that's the picture I saw, was like to build an open culture where people feel a part of something. That the owner, the operating principle cannot think for everyone. They have to cultivate thought.
Right.
And what comes with that is the vulnerability to be wrong. It says essentially fail, meaning, you have I'm just curious what you think about that. Like,
no,
there's like a vulnerability or a
concept.
failure, right? Mm-hmm. It's like there's what I think, and then there's what you think. And if I don't, if I'm not open to what you think, then I'm not going to fail at all. But if I'm open to what you think, I might fail in the sense that you're just going to make me sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. And
Agreed.
so there's a fear in that. Like if you own a
Yes.
business, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to a confidence thing in terms of if you're hiring employees and you're hiring team members and you're putting your ideas out there and opening yourself up in a vulnerable way for those to be dissected, and maybe someone else on your team has a better way to do it or a better idea, you need to embrace that. Now, the way that I think a lot of operators can more easily flow that direction is at the genesis of a business. Typically, there's some core values around what the business is, what it's going to be about. And if you haven't done that, the people need to stop immediately and do that. I mean, for M1 Academy, one of the core values is that it's virtual, whether it's an online community, a coaching group, one-on-one, we're able to do that from anywhere and help anyone in any location. Another core value is that we want to work with people that want to grow. I'm not in the business of trying to convince people to do something, because then later on I've got to talk them out of doing something else. So we want to work with people that want to grow. We're all about helping people execute at a higher level. We're all about a foundation of mindset in terms of tactics. I say that because there's a whole list of core values. Those are important because when it comes time to make a business decision, when it comes time to grow, you can always look back at your core values and decide, does this align with what the genesis of this business, this company, this thing is supposed to be? Then you can kind of open up your mind and kind of let go of the reins a little bit for other people to go out and be creative and come up with ideas and pick things apart. Because if it's a great idea, you no longer have to be insecure about that, because what they did is within the environment that you created, as you said, within the culture of the company, within the core values of what you guys are doing, they came up with a really cool idea. Well, now you can, maybe not publicly, but in your mind, own part of that idea because you created the culture and the environment that idea was spawned from, as opposed to, no, that's, I want to do it. I want to do it this way. That's a scarcity mindset. I want people that work for me to come in and have better ideas than me. I want people that come behind me to do better than I did, because I can rest easily knowing that's the point and the core value of what it is that we're trying to do. And I created an environment for that to happen. Had I not come along, that environment may not have been created. And I think if people will look at it that way, they're going to be more open to being vulnerable and letting people kind of run with things that maybe were better than what they came up with.
Phil, in closing, because people just have to tune into part 2 of this philosophical endeavor we're on, mindset. What do you want people to take away from this conversation, actionably and conceptually, as it relates to them and their success in 2024?
Man, I love this. Love this question. The thing I want them to take away is that the gap between where you are and where you want to be is really all about a decision to do whatever it takes. Whether that's action, whether that's mindset, whether that's failures and successes, or whatever journey, you just have to make a decision that this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not going to be denied. I'm going to get there. If you can make that decision and just stick with that decision, everything else that comes along is part of it. And something that I heard one time, and I preached to everyone, the way to make yourself not quit is to make the pain of quitting hurt worse than the pain of pushing through. Go all in on that thing, so that the pain of pushing through isn't going to hurt as much as you actually having to walk away from this thing that you're all in on. So you just have to make a decision. We all know people that when they've made their mind up, there's no changing their mind. Nope, you're not going to be able to change her mind or his mind for anything. But we forget that we can do that too. We can make the decision. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm doing, and it's going to happen. And then I'm going to do whatever it takes. Is that time? Is that action? Is that attitude? Probably all of the above. But if you take that away and realize that you can do those things because other people have, it's going to get you everywhere you want to go.